dark side.
2, 1, 0.
David Pleasance, former MD of Commodore UK, and you've just released a book. And could you tell us about how today's been going, even with the book sales?
It's phenomenal. Hello everybody, welcome, thank you for coming. I don't know about this term legendary, I don't know quite what that means. I'm a legend in my own lunchtime or something, you know. Yes, I'm pleased to say that after a very long period, a much longer period of time than I expected it to be, I have actually, as you can see, finished the book and got it back from the printers. It's been an immense journey writing this book, because one of the things is that you forget. You start writing a story and it's a true story, then you've forgotten that there's an aspect of it. And what I was finding is I was waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, oh my God, I must put that in. And I had to get up in the middle of the night and write it on the computer, otherwise I'd forget it. I don't know if anybody's experienced that before. If you think of something in the night, if you don't write it down, it's gone. Particularly if you're a songwriter, I can assure you of that. Excuse me. Yeah, well, today has been absolutely amazing. In fact, this is really almost embarrassing. I've almost sold out of books. I thought I'd bought enough for 2 days plus, but I've virtually sold out already. Excuse me. I've got my Kermit in here.
Well, the one fantastic thing about this book is it's not just you, there's loads of contributors, and they all have really different opinions as well. So you have even people that you really didn't get on with at work, and they're also telling their side of the story. So it's a really neutral.
Yeah, well, basically what happened was that my initial concept was that I thought it was right and proper that the massive amount of Commodore and Amiga fans around the world ought to know the truth, what actually happened, what didn't happen, why it didn't happen, and so on and so forth. So I thought, well, having been with Commodore 12 and a half years, I think I'm one of the longest serving employees there. I thought, I'm sure that I can give enough information that people will really appreciate. However, I also thought I wanted to get one or two other people to contribute, including the amazing RJ Michael and Dave Haney, who's one of the engineers there, obviously, was one. But what I did was that when I actually read everything that I'd written, what it seemed to me was it was more a story about David Pleasance than it was about Commodore. I guess because it was coming from my eyes and my mouth, if you like. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted a very balanced overview. So I decided, especially as RJ was going through a pretty hard time that last year, his mum died and various other things, and he was taking longer to send me his chapter than anybody expected. But I always felt it was worth waiting for, and it certainly was. But I thought, well, while I'm waiting for him, I might as well try to get other people to write. So I've got a chapter, for example, from Beth Richards. She was the lead engineer on the CD1200 project, which of course never came to fruition because Commodore went under before then. I've got a chapter from Gail Wellington, who was sort of the mother of the software side of Commodore. Wonderful lady, American lady, but she was working in the UK for quite a long time. And I've also included chapters from people with completely different perspectives. For example, Steve Jones, who did the Checkmate A1500, he has a version of what happened to him when he went to visit Commodore, which was about a month, I think, almost exactly a month after I'd left UK and gone to Commodore International. And he had a version of that story, which the person he met there in Commodore was Kieran Sumner. And Steve's version of what happened there was very different to the way Kieran writes it in his chapter. I've also got an amazing chapter all about the C65, and this has come from somebody who was not involved with Commodore, but was almost obsessed with the C65 and has done an amazing amount of research. And as I put him in touch with Paul Lasser, who was the guy who designed the C65, and Paul also designed the A3000. And just out of interest, Paul works with me now in Friend Unifying Platform. He works with us in the States.
Well,
Well,
you mentioned R.J. Michael's chapter there, and he was one of the original architects of the Amiga Intuition. And he talked about how Commodore was actually the saviour, because there's a lot of kind of, I wouldn't say slating, but there's a lot of stuff about the bad management in the book. And without Commodore, Amiga wouldn't have survived. It wouldn't have been there, it just would have gone.
Yeah, well, they were the Amiga Corporation, I think they were called themselves originally, and the product was called the Lorraine, after one of the guy's girlfriends. And the truth of the matter is that after Jack Tramiel left Commodore, the first thing he did was to go to the Amiga Corporation and do a deal with them. And what he did was he lent them $500,000 on the premise that if they didn't pay him back within X amount of time, a very ridiculous short amount of time, I understand, then he would own the company. And once he'd secured that deal and gave them a check, he immediately went and got hold of Atari, which he got for the princely sum of $1, and he was supposed to pay all the debts, but anybody who acquires a business in liquidation, they never pay the debts. So anyway, there he was, he bought Atari, that was going to be his vehicle to launch the Amiga, but in the meantime, Commodore had gone to visit and offered a much better deal, and so Commodore did the deal with the Amiga guys, and Jack Tramiel came like a raging bull after them, and they just gave him his check back. They'd never even cashed his check, so he was a bit, let's say, peed off by that. But give him fair credit, because he immediately got people involved, and they designed and released DST in a very short space of time, when Commodore, of course, they were building the Amiga 1000, which was kind of a no man's land product. It wasn't business and it wasn't games.
Do you think if Amiga had gone to Atari, we would have the whole range of Amiga computers, or would it have just been killed off?
Do you know, it's a very, very excellent question, but I don't think anybody's in a position to answer that. The one thing for sure is that I believe that Commodore was always destined to fail, because it was a company that never ever had a business plan. But I think that once Tramiel left, he was the founder and the driving force behind it, and I honestly think that once he left, they lost control of what was happening. You had Irving Gould was the chairman and a major shareholder, 22% shareholder, and he just employed these different people, and they all contributed to its downfall.
Well, we talk a lot about Amiga versus Atari, and we've never mentioned Amiga and Amstrad. Did Commodore have any interaction with Amstrad? Or?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we had a meeting with them. Lord Sugar, Lord Sugar, that makes me cringe. We had a meeting with Lord Sugar before he was Lord, before he was anything, and to be honest with you, it was like trying to deal with a West End barra boy. He every second word was an F or a C, and I'm not kidding, this is absolutely true. And to be honest with you, he just wanted opportunity, I think, to poke demean at us. He really wasn't serious about wanting to do any business with us or anything like that, although that was the premise when we went there. And of course, give Commodore its due. When somebody says we might be interested in buying you or working with you, they did at least follow up. So yes, we did talk with Sugar, and it just didn't come to anything. But on that subject about people wanting us, let me tell you this story. It is in the book, but I got phoned up by Mary Ali, and he said, I want 2 or 3 really good people from the industry, and I want you to bring them, and we're going to meet. We're going to meet in the Far East. Okay. So anyway, I dragged 2 people along plus me, and we I didn't know where we were going. We went to ASA, and so Mehdi was talking away, and then he said to me, right, Pleasance, give them a presentation about what you're doing in the UK. He hadn't asked me to do much at all. I didn't even know why I was there. Anyway, I did a presentation. It was terrible because I hadn't been prepared. And then it turns out that we were at ASA because they were interested in buying us. And he never told me. Can you imagine going to a meeting where, I mean, I could have prepared some amazing things for them, but I didn't know what we were doing there. He didn't bother to tell us. That's unbelievable, isn't it? It's 100% true.
Well, Amiga kind of, a lot of people thought that, you know, in Europe it was dwindling down a bit, but actually in Poland there was a massive emerging scene. Why was this scene kind of created in Poland all of a sudden, and this huge demand for Amigas?
Well, you've got to remember that they were 5 years behind everybody else because of the communist regime. And although products were being smuggled into Poland, obviously through the back door, and that of course creates a vacuum of demand, because the only way you can get one is like illegally. So they were behind the times. So they went from the 64, which was a good seller there, to the Amiga big time. I mean, there was no transition. It was like Amiga, and that was very interesting because. We weren't set up to... Actually, Poland was one of my country's responsibilities when I was at CEL in Switzerland, 1990 to 92. It was one of my countries, but because we weren't officially allowed to sell in there, I wasn't able to do anything. Nowadays, I mean, we do supply there. You know, as you know, we've been to Poland recently, and what a wonderful place, and the Amiga community is immense. Absolutely immense. They can't do enough for us.
Yeah, because when you were kind of discussing the buyout deal and stuff, it was kind of like, oh, which markets would you hit? And then I suddenly noticed all these Polish software houses coming out, Polish hardware as well, so it was really getting big there. One thing that you revealed as well was the kind of the war between the ST and the Amiga, and how the Amiga could have had the MIDI port, and it was some crazy price. I think it was 87 cents that they could have actually spent to have the MIDI port. It must have really pained you years later when everybody said, but the Atari's got MIDI.
Yeah, well, I literally went to, I should call it MIDI Alley, shouldn't I? Not MIDI Alley. I went to MIDI Alley and said, listen, the one feature that we don't have, which would be very useful to us, because in all other respects we were a better product than the ST. I said, we just need a MIDI port. And he said, oh, I've looked into that. He said, it's going to cost 87 cents. And he said, there's only 2 or 3 out of every 10 will want it. Why waste that extra money? That was his view on what you do.
Well, you did manage to convince everybody to buy Amigas by getting their parents to buy them with this Batman pack with some educational software included. When you started seeing stuff like the Atari Power Pack, did you have a little grin?
What can you say without being too rude? Look, the thing is this, is that we started a trend, and how that came about is that I had a new boss came in yet again, and this guy knew absolutely nothing, Steve Franklin, he knew nothing at all about the consumer market. And when he first came in, the very first thing he did was he fired every one of our salespeople in the business systems division, except 2, and brought his own people in. The 2 that he kept, one was Kieran Sumner, who knew about the Amiga 1000, which of course none of his people knew about, and the other person he kept was a guy called Peter Talbot, who was in charge of our education division and was doing a very good job. He was public school educated, and he was doing a very good job in universities and colleges and things. So he fired everybody. And as God is my witness, for 2 weeks he did not say one word to me, for 2 weeks. Then on the when he did, he came up to me and he said, "Pleasance, my office." No. Okay. Sat me down. He said, "Right," he said, "I just want to tell you, if I knew anybody at all who could do your job, you wouldn't be here today." Thanks a lot, you know. He said, "No," he said, "I've got nothing against you. I don't know anything about you." But he said, "I've been brought in here to change the whole ethos of Commodore UK." I have to say I don't know why, because we were pretty successful anyway. So anyway, he said, "So, given that I'm stuck with you, here are my rules." And he spent half an hour telling me all about integrity and honesty and everything which my whole being abides to anyway. So when he finished, I said, "I'll tell you what, Steve, then. I'll make a deal with you. You're in no effing position to make a deal with me." I said, "Hear me out." I said, "If you let me do what I wanted to do for ages, I'll either bring you more business than we've ever seen before, or I'll give you grants to get rid of me. What do you want to do?" And so I pointed at the Amiga 500 sitting on a desk, and I said, "Look at that. That's a piece of plastic with some keys on it. That's all it is. How can you market and sell that? Because what you need to market and sell is what it do for you, not what it is." So I said, "So from now on, we will not sell computers, we'll sell dreams." And that's where the idea of the Batman pack came from, putting together something that was compelling, that you knew that the children wanted because we put absolutely top whiz games in it, but he also put in Deluxe Paint, he put in Wordsworth, and other products that justified the parents' decision in buying the computer in the first place. And if I tell you that we forecast, and when I did the deal with Ocean, we forecast, I committed to buy from them 10,000 pieces. We ended up buying 186,000 pieces of software, because that's how many Amigas we sold in 12 weeks at Christmas.
Wow. So an emerging theme from the book, for me, is kind of waste. And the waste that Commodore did with the technology that it had, the waste that executives did with money. Could you first tell us about some of the executives and kind of how they wasted Commodore's good money?
Well, one of the most notorious, I guess, was the GM of Commodore Holland. His name was Bernard Van Tienen. He's dead now, sadly, but he wouldn't contest what I'm telling you because it's 100% true. He used to brag to all of us general managers that every quarter, when he had not achieved his target for the quarter, he would invent invoices. He would load product onto a truck and send it on a journey for 4 days to come back in again in the first couple of days of the new quarter. And he did this every quarter without fail. It subsequently turns out that he had several companies with Commodore names that he set up, and nobody knows where all the money went to, but there was a lot of money involved. But one thing we know absolutely 100% for certain, Commodore UK had cores. There was one IP, I'm not sure what it was, I can't remember, but one IP that we had an interest in at Commodore UK, and we shared that interest with Commodore Holland. So we had to go and meet up with the liquidator in Holland. And so we had our meeting and everything was fine. And anyway, then he says, "Oh, gentlemen," he says, "tell me what you think about this." And he slid a piece of paper across the table to us. And it was a summary of expenses that had been put in by Bernard Van Tienen. And they were all for this establishment in Amsterdam called Yab Yum, which is apparently the most high-profile brothel in the whole of Holland, right? And get this, the value of these expenses, $480,000.
Well, also
Wasteful money.
Well, also Commodore had a full LCD screen division as well that they did nothing with in Westchester, where they were building the Commodore laptop, the LCD prototype. Do you know anything about that?
All I can tell you is what I saw once. In fact, I had it in my hands and took it around to test market when I was vice president in America. That was 1992. I had a very tiny, smaller than that, I guess you'd call it a notebook, which was a 386 machine with a beautiful screen. It was fabulous little product that we had designed, and I took it around to just get a response from people. But the US had really screwed up their market there. We had a very bad retail presence because of what they'd done over there. I did manage to turn it around, as it happens, but again, it's in the book, so I won't tell you now. But we had so much technology. But one of the biggest problems with Commodore was that they'd have engineers, good engineers, who would be tasked to do something. It's probably me. Anyway, they were tasked to do something, and then somebody new would come in and walk up and they'd say, "What are you working on?" "Oh, I'm working on this." "Oh, we don't want that. Stop doing that and do this." And they abandoned so many projects that were 2/3 of the way through and looking good, and they abandoned them without realising that, not even asking whether there was a market for these things. They just abandoned them and made them do something else, which there probably wasn't a market for either.
Well, when you and Colin tried to do the buyout deal, you got to see all the stocks and all the assets. How much unwanted stock was stored in different places around the world, and how much of an effort was it to get it back? I heard that Colin had to hire a military jet or a military plane at one time and load it up with C-64s.
No, I don't know where that came from. No, Colin Pradford, who ended up being my co-MD, who also works at Friend, by the way. Well, he has an involvement in Friend, he's got his own business, but he was recruited, and his job was to, first of all, to check out the inventory that was reported being held in Braunschweig in the German factory. And they'd valued it, I don't have the actual numbers, but let's say, for example, it was valued at $220 million or something. He had to go and do a complete quantity survey of what was there, and it turned out it was probably worth about $2 million, but they were paying a fortune, an absolute fortune, for premises to store all this stuff in. And that's just another example that, one of the biggest challenges that I could see, and the reason why all of these things happen, is that Commodore never ever had any independent auditing. I mean, all companies, you should have a team of independent auditors drop in on you, unannounced, and go through your books, make sure that everything you're doing is correct and bona fide. They never did that. So all of these people got away with all this stuff for so long, and in the end, it just, it's like the inverted triangle fell out.
And there was kind of dead product as well, which was like the Spirits of the Stones game, which you got rid of in a rather inventive way.
Yeah, that's a nice little story, actually. When we moved out of Corby, and again, I never understood why on earth we had a 10-acre site which we built Corby on. It was manufacturing, warehousing, offices, and everything, and they decided to get rid of it. I don't understand for the life of me why. But anyway, when we did, we had to move out of there, and I was given the responsibility of getting rid of everything. And we had, Commodore used to be in the software business. They were never very good at it. The only product they did well with, I think, was international soccer. Yeah. Anyway, I started looking at all this stuff, and there's a huge amount of software inventory that's just worthless. And there was this one product that was called Spirit of the Stones. And basically, it was one of these games where you have to identify, it was based on the Isle of Wight, and the game was you had to identify certain locations where there was gems or something hidden, and you could actually find these gems, what have you. Anyway, that game had been designed and created in conjunction with the Isle of Wight Tourist Bureau, I think they were called. And that was a deal set up where every game that was sold, the Isle of Wight Tourist Board would get £5 or something. So anyway, I got an offer for I don't know, something like about 60,000 of these things. I can't remember the exact number, but a lot. And I got an offer for, I think it was £2.50 each. So I got in touch with the Isle of Wight Tourist Board, and I said, right, you're on this deal for, £5 a unit, but it's impossible. I'm now going to sell them. How about, we split? I think I said, you get £1, we get £1, and then we'll pay all the freight and everything. And they refused. No, £5 or nothing. I said, well, you leave me no choice. I'll have to destroy it. You won't do that. We did. We got a lawyer, we got a digger, 2 lawyers, and we got a digger, and we built a bloody great big hole, and somewhere I won't tell you where it was, and we buried all of these things because it would have cost us a fortune to sell them.
Well, Amiga also were developing some RISC PC technology later on, and what kind of things did you see before the buyout deal, like at the very end?
Oh, this is the most upsetting for me. When Colin and I were doing our due diligence, checking out what it is that we were actually going to be bidding for to buy the whole assets of Commodore, we were shown things that, particularly the latest technology that was being developed at that time, and this was a chip which is codenamed Ombre, which is like mother effer. That's what Ombre means. And what it was an HP RISC-based core in which they had implanted a 3D rendering engine, a Blither chip. They had 5.1 surround sound stereo, which was the state of the art. This is 1994, remember. And they cobbled together and showed me what it could do. And let me tell you now, hand on heart, there is nothing on the market today that comes anywhere near close to that technology. And when Escom bought the assets, they just let it go.
And you also tried to form a relationship with Escom as well, in kind of a chance to maybe buy it back from them, and they weren't interested at all.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows the ignorance, and I think this was a bit of pig-headedness and a bit of jealousy, because by then Bernard Van Tienen was one of the directors of Escom. It somehow wheedled his way in there, and so was Tichenko, who has been my enemy from day one. But anyway, what happened is that we had a meeting with Manfred Schmidt, who most people don't even know, the owner of Escom. He was ex-Commodore, he was manager of Commodore Germany for quite a while. So we had a meeting with him and we said, listen, Commodore UK, which is still trading, and we were the last company to keep trading because we were the strongest business by a long way, Commodore UK is up for sale. And we think you should buy it. And he said, why would we want to do that? And we said, because we have £5 million worth of tax credits, that if you buy us and continue trading pretty much the same way as we have been, you can utilise. You know, you can do millions and millions worth of business without owing taxes, which is a pretty compelling reason to buy a business.
Well, with Commodore going bankrupt, how did the upper management and Mediali kind of guys protect themselves from this and actually make a bit of money? Well, I'm not saying they made any money, but what they did was they were highly illegal. What they did, Mediali, Irving Gould, and all the rest of the board, they had a meeting with their insurance broker. And they did a deal with the insurance broker, which cost $5 million, and it was to protect all the officers and directors of Commodore from being prosecuted for anything. That $5 million was for a policy which was non-cancelable, non-revocable, non-everything. It had to stand. The only thing wrong with that, of course, is that $5 million was creditors' money they spent. It wasn't their own money. So the creditors got robbed for that. And the ironic thing is, of course, is that it protected people like Bernard Van Tienen. He was sued, but the insurance policy covered all his expenses. Same thing with Petro Tichenko. He got sued, but it was covered. And that really, really irks me. I'm sorry, but it makes me so angry. Well, there was a bit of a legacy from your kind of plan, which was you were going to make a range called Amiga Infinity, which was tower cases that you could pull sections out of and users could upgrade. And you also had the Powered by Amiga kind of motto. That ended up becoming infinitive cases. How did that happen then? Yeah, one of our plans was that we were going to only concentrate on Amiga products,
plus of course developed the Ombre, which would not have been backwards compatible. I tell you that right now. There's no way it could have been. This is far too advanced for that. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to increase the longevity of the Amiga range. And so what we decided to do was we had designed a case made by a company in Germany, a case which was a tower case, and the whole concept was that using the independent dealers, forget the Dixons and the Comets and the Currys and all these people who were pretty useless at those sort of things, but using independent dealers, the idea was that if you were a 500 owner and you wanted, and you've got lots of peripherals, and you wanted actually to move up to the 1200, you could go to an independent dealer, he would sell you the tower case, and he would take your PCB and sell you a 1200 PCB and put it in the case. You could then utilise your peripherals. You could do the same with the 2000 and the 3000 and the 4000. The case was designed to take all of those PCBs, and we committed that what we would also do is that we would sell PCBs from any of these products on their own, so that if you wanted to put together something yourself, we'd let you, because why not? We can still make money out of it. It hasn't got to be a finished product to sell. And let's be honest about it, that's a cracking idea. So we had this case designed, and we called it Infinity. That's actually the name that Kieran Sumner came up with. And we are absolutely certain that would have been a huge success. And we determined that any model that we produced, we would make certain that the PCB would fit the case. So it would be as long as we could keep it going, it would be kept going.
Well, let's end on a nice note. And what was your kind of favourite part of the book, the whole experience of the Kickstarter, before we go to questions from the audience?
My favourite part was when I finished signing and wrapping 1,400 books, to be honest with you. It was a massive task. I didn't realise it was going to be so big. No, to be honest with you, I've loved it because, you know, I mean, this was like 25, 30 years ago when all of this happened. And for me, at my age, to sort of be able to remember all this stuff is amazing. But then I got in touch with other people, and you touched on the fact earlier on that, for example, I didn't get on with everybody, but I included people that I didn't even get on with because I want the whole thing to be true, and it has to be true. And a really good example of that is when I joined Commodore, there was a guy called Tim Cheney who worked for Commodore. I joined Commodore to sell pets into the retail sector, and Tim Cheney was looking after the national account, selling Big 20s and the newly released 64. He then quit. He and I didn't see eye to eye, but we had not much to do with each other. But anyway, I got made into his role, and that didn't go down well with Paul Welsh, who was the sales manager, because Paul is one of these people who only wants to recruit the people he wants to pick. But the way that Commodore operated was, depending on what your budget was, often you would have to pick somebody from within the company already, because of budgets. So I was made, and to be honest with you, I was absolutely spot on perfect for the job, because my background had been selling into retail all my life. But Paul Welsh didn't like me because he didn't choose me. I never knew that at the time. And he and Tim Cheney were very close. But ultimately, not long after, Tim Cheney came back. And then he never told me that it'd been brought back over me. Nobody told me. So one day, he says to me, you're going on a meeting, you're going on a sales call. I said, yeah. I was going to Lasky's. He said, do you mind if I come with you? I said, no, not at all. So we go and we had this meeting, and I did some business, and the next day I got a 14-page report of all the things I did wrong. So I wanted to shove it up his backside, to be honest with you. But anyway, cut a long story short, he ultimately left again. He ended up getting into the software business. He ended up becoming, I think he was MD of Virgin Games. He's a very rich man now. But anyway, what made this even worse, it's so funny, it's incredible. When we did the launch of the CD32, which we did at the Science Museum, it was a very restricted guest list, invitation only. Now, we hired Chris Evans to be our co-presenter, because he was an up-and-coming, and you could get him at the right price sort of thing. But what happened was, without me knowing, because I'm in the back getting ready to do the presentation, and there came a certain time and we locked the doors. And Tim Cheney was at the wrong side of the doors, and he thought I'd done it on purpose. It was so funny. Anyway, ultimately we met again, and we buried the hatchet. Probably he buried the hatchet in my head, I'm not sure. But anyway, we got on pretty well after that, and I got him to write a chapter in the book. And I think that's really good, because he's telling that, you know, it wasn't great between us, which is absolutely true, and I only want the truth to come out.
Well, if any of you guys have questions for David, then please put your hand up and I'll run around with the mic.
Just got to turn it on.
You have to speak to a nice man.
Hi there, David. Just wondering, when you were talking about you having a meeting with Alan Sugar, you were talking about having a meeting with Alan Sugar. Was that around the time he was looking at, or he had bought Sinclair, or was that when it was he looking for other, you know, computer brands to buy? Or
To be honest with you, what I think it was, and I'm not really sure, but what I think it was that he wanted to get an understanding of the competition. So I think he you know, sort of handed out an olive branch, and we went to see him, but he was such a prick. I mean, he was, and he was very good at it.
Any more questions?
Okay, can we... Oh, there's one at the front of Aaron, and there's another as well.
You know, in your book you talk about sponsoring Chelsea. Can you tell me if you actually did, if you won any money out of that, or, you know, you just paid, you know, the money off for the sponsorship deal?
Yeah, we never won any money out of it. The idea was that we were shirt sponsors, so we had initially Commodore on the shirts, and then when Colin and I took over, we changed it to Amiga because it's bigger. You can have the same size but less words. What it was about brand association, and interestingly, around the same time, Commodore Germany sponsored Bayern Munich, France sponsored Paris Saint-Germain, and there was somebody else that we sponsored all around the same time. And I'll tell you what, I mean, even though it was expensive, we were at the time of the signing, Commodore UK was the largest shirt sponsorship deal ever. It pales in insignificance now, but I think we paid 1.25 million over a period of time. But there is an interesting side to it, and that is that every time a company that you sponsor, if they are successful and they win, it costs you more money. And it came to the time when Chelsea got into the FA Cup final. And these are the days when Ken Bates owned it. And he should have been known by the name Master Bates, I think. But anyway, I can tell you that when they got into the FA Cup final, they wanted to send us 4 tickets. 4 tickets, and we'd spent 1.25 million with them. We obviously didn't let him get away with that. But anyway, what I'm leading to is that if they had won that FA Cup final, it would have cost us a lot of money. We went to an insurance company to see what it would cost us to offset, and it was a lot of money. So what Colin engineered, and absolutely brilliant, we decided to place bets. And we got 40 people all over the country, exactly the same time, went into the bookies and put a bet on, which would cover us in the event of them, because then when that all happened, of course, the odds all changed, but we did it, you know, synchronicity. And so we covered ourselves by placing bets in the bookies. That's in the book too. It's pretty clever, isn't it? Pretty clever.
Did you end up better or worse off?
Well, no, we broke even. Yeah, it just saved us paying out a lot of money.
Yeah, right.
Any more?
There was one at the front. Right. No, just this.
I bought my Amiga 1200 back in July 1994 from Rumbelows, if anyone can remember those stores. It was literally the last one on the shelf. And after that, I never saw any more Amigas out in Dick's or anywhere for sale. And was that because Commodore were going bankrupt, or was that because there was just literally no stock left in the UK?
99.
94.
94. Yeah, well, that would be why. Because what happened is that as each of the subsidiaries of Commodore around the world went bust, because they had no parent company and no stock, we bought all their stock. And we kept trading. We kept trading 14 months after the parent company went bankrupt. So any stock that there was, it came to us.
There's one at the back of you.
Hiya. I was just wondering what it was like to switch off the lights, so to speak, in Maidenhead when Commodore UK finally closed its doors. What was the feelings like then?
It's very difficult to describe really, because what I can say is that the team of people that we had at Commodore UK were exceptional to a T. Every single person was wonderful. They were really good at their job, and we were a great team. But the worst thing of all, just before that, was that Colin and I were in New York wanting to bid for the worldwide assets of Commodore and planned to. When we got cheated out of it, 50% of our investment was coming from a Chinese manufacturing company called New Star Electronics, and they pulled out from our bid, having been stolen by the ESCOM guys, particularly Petro Tachenko. So we knew that we could not bid for the assets, and the reason was, even though we thought the assets would sell for around 14 or 15 million, and we had 25 million, we knew that because Commodore had owed money everywhere, there was no way that the suppliers would give us credit terms, obvious. So we did our homework, and Colin in particular, who was a brilliant financial guy, we estimated that it would take us about 7 months of having to pay cash up front for our components before we could earn the right to get credit terms. Therefore, we knew to run the business we needed $50 million. So even though we were left with 25 million, we just took the decision that it would be very wrong of us to invest that money knowing that within a few months we'd be bankrupt. So we decided not to bid. But you can imagine that we had to ring up all our team in the UK and say, hi guys, after all this work, we're not going to bid. It was terrible. But actually closing the doors, that was very, very sorrowful. The only thing I can say is that we got as much money as we could, and we repaid, the majority of our creditors got paid, probably 70 or 80%, which was amazing, but that's because we were a strong business. We couldn't pay everybody, it's impossible. But the one thing is I actually rescued, from the skip, I rescued the royal warrant that we'd earned in, I think it was in around about 82, 83, for selling pets to the royal family. And that I rescued that from the skip, and I actually gave that to the Cambridge Museum of Computing History, which they've now got on display. But recently, more recent than that, I discovered, I'd forgotten all about it, I actually had taken a colour photocopy of it, and I found that, so that's gone to the Leicester Museum, what's it called, Retro Computer Museum?
Yeah, that's the one.
So they've got a photocopy of it as well. So that was something that, I was chased actually for a while by the Smithsonian, they wanted a copy of it, they wanted the original. But I thought, no, this is British, I mean, royal warrant is British, you've got to stay, keep it in Britain.
Sad that was in the skip.
Oh.
There's one here.
Hi David.
Hi.
Did Commodore UK have much opportunity to provide feedback in terms of product development through which to steer the range centrally? And if so, do you think you were taken seriously?
No, we did. We fed all back all the time, but they never listened. You know, the story, which I'm not going to repeat, but the story that is the most, I think the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Most indicative of what Commodore was like is the story about the Amiga 600. When you find out about that, what we asked for and what we ended up getting, and it was an absolute travesty. But we gave them loads and loads of feedback. And I mean, we were telling them, look, we've just sold 186,000 Amiga 500s in a Batman pack, why aren't you making the rest of Europe follow suit? Because the children and their parents are the same no matter what country they're in. It's the same principle. You should make them do it. And they never did. Every country was given a percentage of their turnover as marketing. They all spent it on different things in different ways. And I went to Mehdi Ali and I said to him, Mehdi, I've just come back from holiday. So I said, when my wife and my 2 kids, and we drove up to Heathrow Airport, and there's a big sign there with a Sony and an advert. And when we landed in Malaga, there's exactly the same sign, but in Spanish. I said, that's global branding. We don't do that. Are we crazy? You know, let's say we spent £500,000 getting a TV commercial done. We should get that TV commercial done, and at the same time get it dubbed in all the different languages and use that around the world. They never did it. Everybody did their own thing. And I'm sorry, but that is insanity, in my opinion.
Any more at all? One at the back, I think.
Hi David. You're on about the ARM chip that you lost the rights to. Who owns the patents to it at the moment? And is there any ideas for doing anything with it?
Well, the main designer of it was a Dr. Ed Hepler, and I actually met him with a friend. We had a meeting. We called in as many of the ex-Commodore engineers as possible to talk to him about Friend and what we're planning to do. And that was in November 2016. And he was broken-hearted because he'd done all this work. But no, you can't. I don't think you can attribute anything to anybody now because, you know, it's 30 years, and I think not only has he lost any desire to do anything, I think he's lost the plot now as well. He's not a young man. So in answer to your question, I don't think there's anything that's recoverable. I don't think so. And you'd have to be very brave to do it now anyway. At the time it was being developed was been perfect, but I think you'd have to be very, very brave to do it now.
Yeah, there's probably a few things knocking around Dave Haney's garage, but that's about it. Any more questions? No? We get a big round of applause for David Pleasance. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say that, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it. Can I tell you, I'm very embarrassed to say that I'm almost out of books. I didn't bring enough books with me to last for tomorrow. I think I've got about 24 books left here. So anybody who wants one, please come and see me and I'll happily sign it. You know it'll be worth less if I sign it, but anyway. But if anybody wants a book and I've sold out, I'm happy to post it to you. And if I have to post it to you, then I won't charge you postage because it's my fault I've run out of books. But I've got a little stand inside that main area there, and if anybody wants one, come and see me. I'd be pleased to sell you one. I want your money, really.
Cheers, thank you, David.